Okay, welcome everyone, and good morning. It's so nice to see so many of you choosing to come to our session instead of the keynote. That's great. I have actually been living in Amsterdam for 1 year, and I must say that of everything that could go wrong during a session, expecting sun in Amsterdam was on the bottom of that list. So we have many stickers of you for you after this session, but I wish we would have brought sunglasses instead.
Yeah.
So welcome to this session. We are going to talk about 5 ways that you can impress your colleagues with automation. And before getting started, we would like to remind you to please join our WebEx space for this session, where you can give us your best questions, and we will do our best to tackle them after this session. Also, please, a reminder to do the survey after the session, because it's really important to us as speakers. 5 is it's a great number. So let's get started. We're going to do a role play. We're still playing ourselves, Christina and Julio, but it's going to be a role play. So, together here with me on stage, I have Julio Gomez. He's a network engineer in Cisco. He is in his 40s. It says on the PowerPoint he's closer to his 50s. And he has been working for Cisco for 20 years. He's a routing expert. He's a CCIE. He loves his BGP tables, right?
And together with me here, we have Miss Coughlin. Miss Coughlin has a very different set of abilities. Not only she's in her 20s, which is kind of an insult to someone like me, but also she brings a very, very different background, which is based on programmability, on Python. She just got her DEVNET certs. So it's kind of a different animal compared to me, but at the same time, we needed someone that could help with a recent acquisition. So we acquired a new company called EMCA. And this new company that we acquired has their own infrastructure. And what can we do? I mean, we really need to merge that into our own infrastructure, and we need to start managing that in the same way that we do it with our own network. So we needed someone, and this is what the market brought us. So yeah, we have to deal with that. So, Christina, I mean, from my side, I just want to congratulate you on the new job. You've been here for 2 weeks. And honestly, you're going to spend the best 6 months, since here until summer. We're going to be taking a look at the whole network of the company that we just acquired. You're going to learn about how to check all the versions that we have in that new network. You're going to learn about how to check the configuration of all those interfaces, to optimize that, to take a look at all the routing tables, how BGP is behaving. I think that in 6 months, we can get it done.
6 months of manual work?
Yes.
Like actually connecting down to devices manually and doing show commands?
You're going to love it.
I don't do that. I don't do manual work. That's the whole reason why I became an automation engineer. I want to automate this.
Okay.
Yeah.
So tell me, how would you do that?
What I would do is that I would use an automation framework called PyATS, which is Cisco developed. So what PyATS can do is that it can help us take all of these show commands that you were talking about, whatever you want to learn in the network, and it can automate the way that we connect down to our devices and pushes down these different show commands, returns to us, it parses all of the CLI output into a data format that we can work with and start doing intelligent things with. And we can also scale this. So it's not only one device we can do this with, but we can do that for 2 devices and all of our devices in the network. And as a parenthesis, it can actually work with any type of device, not only Cisco devices. But we're not going to talk about that here. But it's just a parenthesis.
That's quite amazing. If we can do, we can deliver on that promise. But you know what? It's a Cisco product, and I'm a cheap guy. So yeah, I don't have the OpEx for that. Probably I cannot afford it. So yeah, I don't care.
Okay, Mr. Cheap Guy, this is actually cheap friendly. Because even though it is developed by Cisco, it's actually open source, which means that you can download it already today and install it in your developer environment and start working with it already today.
Cisco open source?
Yep.
Okay. I don't believe it.
Okay, let me show you.
Okay, because you're all about fluffy stuff in your slides, so I really want to see if that's real.
Fluffy? Okay, let's unfluff it to you. So I'm gonna do a live demo just for you, Julio.
Okay.
Okay? So, for PyATS to work, we need to have something called a testbed file. A testbed file is a YAML file where we we give it information of all of our devices that we want to connect down to. And here we insert all of the juicy information such as credentials, IP addresses, what protocol we're going to use to connect down to our devices, okay? So we need the testbed file. So what we're going to do is that we're going to create a Python file. We are going to make a prayer to the typo god because I have fat fingers. But the first thing we need to do in order to work with PyATS is that we need to need to import the functions that we need in order to load this testbed. So that's what you're going to see me do here. We're going to use this load function that I'm importing to my script in order to load my testbed. No typos so far. Okay, so if we imagine that I have many devices in this testbed, what I want to do is that I want to loop through all of these devices and connect to them. So that's what we're going to do next. Are you following me, Julio?
I'm amazed by how these millennials use CLI in a very different way. You know, it's kind of the CLI, but they're using it for something different. But even myself, I can understand what she's doing. She's looping through the complete testbed and doing the same function, the same call to extract information, right?
Yeah. Did you really need to mention that I'm a millennial? Okay, so what we're doing here is that we're connecting to each of our devices. And then what I want to do is to get that output. So I want to push down a show command, and then I want to get some data that I can work with. Can you give me an example of a show command? Like I don't really know that stuff.
Okay, you got something that is very important, is show version. Just to extract what is the version, the level at where we are in the different versions that are available. Show version.
Version of what?
Version of software.
Oh.
Come on.
Okay.
Need to step up your game.
Okay, so I'm gonna import another function in order to print out this data in a pretty way so I can understand what I want to work with. And then I'm gonna pretty print this data, okay? So no typos, I hope. So now that I'm executing this script, what is happening is that PyATS is connecting down to my router, and it is going to give me back an output, it was fast, an output of all of the data points that are connected to version. So now, looking at this data, I can choose which data point that I want to work with. And my goal here is that I want to show which device runs on which version. So let's do that. Let's do that again, but now, this time, I'm gonna get printed out the exact data point that I'm interested in, which is the short version of the version. And here I get it. So for device, my CSR router, the software version is 17.3. Aren't you impressed?
It's really cool, but I would need to do this for many different devices. So how do you scale this up?
You can just state which devices you want to connect to in your testbed file, and you can start scaling that way.
And then I don't need to change the code, right?
You don't need to change this code. This is 11, how many? 11 lines of code. Isn't that reasonable?
Wow, okay.
So what were you saying before, 6 months?
Okay, that's cool, that's cool. And if I need more commands, I just include additional ones, right?
If you want additional logic, depending on which data you want to work with, depending on what you want to do, you just state it once in your Python script.
Okay, that's really cool. So basically what Christina is describing is how we can do in a very nice and easy way, the network inventory, right? Just extracting information about the whole network that we are not familiar with. That's really, really cool. And we can do that for different environments, different vendors, different iOS versions. We can do all of that automatically. That's really, really cool. But you know what, Christina, you don't understand. You don't get it. You know, real life is different. Real life is about debugging and troubleshooting. You know, that's basically where I spend most of my time. So, yeah, yesterday night, there seemed to be some kind of problem in the network. We are not really sure what happened. But this morning, the database guy just called me and said, hey, nothing is working. So now for the next 6 hours, that is usually the time it takes me, to troubleshoot everything, we're going to work together on trying to identify what happened in the network, and you're going to learn a lot from me.
The network broke. Weren't you the last one in the office yesterday?
Let's not go into that. Let's troubleshoot.
Okay. So I don't like working past 5, okay? So this with 6 hours troubleshooting, I don't know. I actually have an idea how we can prevent these situations from happening in the future. PyTS has a function that can take a snapshot of the state of the configuration of your device and your network. So we can take a snapshot of that configuration in a given point of time, and then when we go ahead and make some changes in the network, what we can do is that we can take another snapshot at another point of time, and we can compare these different snapshots to each other and get highlighted what has changed. Wouldn't this save you some time?
This could be really useful, honestly, especially if we can do that across the network with one single command. That's really cool. But Christina, you don't get it. It's not only about configuration, it's about operational status. If someone unplugs a cable from a switch, there's no configuration change, but at the same time, I'm seeing an operational change that actually delivers on this problem. So can PyATS help with that? Yeah,
we can do that for configuration state data as well and operation data as well.
Both?
Both.
I don't believe it.
Julio, this example is actually something that is friendly for you as well. Because doing this, taking these snapshots using PyATS, doesn't require any line of code.
Okay.
So, we have a router here, okay? So we have some configuration on an interface of this router. It is an old configuration, as we see here. So what we want to do is that we want to take PyATS, and we're going to use the learn config functionality of PyATS. There is no line of code here, it's directly in the terminal. So we do PyATS learn config, where PyATS is going to learn the whole configuration of our device. And then what we do is that we state the testbed file that PyATS is going to use, so it knows which device to connect down to. And then, as an output, we're going to get the old snapshot. We're going to get the original snapshot of the state of the configuration. So what we do here is that we let PyATS learn about the configuration of that device in this state. So now what we're going to do is that we are going to make a change. This is your network change that you did late last night. It is the error that completely destroyed our network,
you
right?
You can't prove anything.
Okay. So this network error destroyed our network. So what we're going to do now, we're going to take a new snapshot by using PyATS learn config. We don't use any line of code here. Okay, we let PyATS work its magic. It connects down to our device. It takes a new snapshot. And now what we can do is that we can create a diff file by taking these two snapshots and use PyATS diff to take out what the difference is between these 2 points in time. PyATS will do this for you, and what we can do, what we're going to see here right after it is done working, is that we are going to open that diff file, and as we can see, we can get highlighted for us what the network change has been, and we can also use another functionality such as diff so fancy and get it printed out in colors, because I know you need that.
Okay, so basically what you're telling me is, with one command, you take a photo of the whole network when everything is working fine.
Correct?
Then when the database guy calls me saying that nothing works, I can take another photo of the whole network with one command. And then one more command to say, show me the difference. And I will automatically understand what changed in my network?
Automagically, yes.
Okay, that sounds really interesting. I would love to have that. But Christina, you don't understand. Real world problems are a little bit different. It's not only about reactive troubleshooting, it's also about being proactive. And I'm going to show you how you can be proactive. It's about understanding what are the problems that are happening in the network before I get the call from the database guy. So let me tell you a story. It was last Christmas. I got a call from the database guy. I love the guy. The database guy called me and said, hey, you know what? Nothing is working, so you better start troubleshooting. I was like, well, I'm about to start Christmas Eve dinner, so can it wait? No, it cannot wait. Okay, so if it cannot wait, I spend the next 6 hours troubleshooting BGP neighborhoods in between the different Ps that we use to provide VPN services end-to-end. And as the end result, after 6 hours, I determined that the BGP neighborhood lost the connection, and that's why all the root distinguishers and root targets were not being redistributed in the neighborhood. So PyATS cannot do any of that, right? I mean, the database had not called. I would have liked to fix that problem before that call. So what do you think? You want to learn to do that?
There were so many words in that I didn't understand. BGP something, I heard something about a neighbor. But I think what hurt the most, did you work during Christmas?
24/7.
That's terrible. Okay, so we can actually, okay, so let me get this straight, right? Okay, so I didn't understand the BGP stuff that you were talking about, but what I understood was that, okay, you have two devices. Let us say you have two devices. And these two devices, they have some sort of connectivity between each other. Like, they should be doing some BGP something, right?
You got it.
Okay, so what you want to do is to check whether these two are actually having this BGP thingy and talking to each other, right? Yeah, the thingy. And to do that, you're connecting into each of the devices, and you're like doing a lot of show commands. And you just do this proactively, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so what you want to check is that this line hasn't gone down. Okay, I think I understand it. We can actually use PyATS to automate this. So we can use PyATS to test whether these two devices have the configuration and have the state that is desired. And we can let PyATS do all of the work, so we can take all of that logic that you have in your head, we can put it in and formulate that as a test in PyATS and let it test that for us. And then we can let it work. We can go and grab a cup of coffee, and then if something changes, we can get notified.
So it will notify me proactively if something is wrong before the database guy calls me? I'm in.
Yeah. Do you want to see it?
I would love to see if it's real.
Okay, let's see it. So, what we do here, in order to make this work, is that we have created a Python script called BGP check job. This is a job file. We use the job file in order to tell it which tests to conduct in which order. And then we use PyATS run job, and we execute this Python file in order to do these tests. We state which test bed we need, because we need the test bed in PyATS, right? And then we can use live view to see PyATS work in real time. So now we have an environment of 4 routers that have BGP configured. I don't know how, but somehow it's configured. And then we let PyATS work. So what we can see here in this web interface is that PyATS is connecting down to each of these 4 routers. And that is what we're seeing in live view. This is something that you would have done manually, okay? And after PyATS has automatically connected down to all of these devices, it starts looking at what is stated in my Python file here, my job file. So first I need to learn about the state of BGP. I need to shoot all of these show commands that are in Julio's head. And Julio, you wouldn't be able to type this fast, right?
I'm very fast.
But not this fast.
I'm very fast.
Okay. So we are letting our computer do what it does best, and that is heavy repetitive work, because we're really bad at that, and I don't do that. So PyATS is learning about all of the configuration, and what is going to happen after it has learned about all of the configuration and the states of the BGP is that it's going to carry out the tests, which is what we're seeing here. So the output is basically, we can see we have chosen how to present this, but we take each of the devices, we check its peers, and we see whether a BGP peering is established or not. And we can see whether our test has passed or failed, and if our test fails somewhere, we can choose whether we want to get notified about that or not. Isn't this powerful?
That's really cool. That would have avoided me, spending my time in Christmas Eve, troubleshooting. That's really cool.
Imagine how much spare time you would have.
Yeah, let's see how the family would be happy or not about it, but that's a different topic. That's really cool. That's really cool. But you know what, Christina? The real world challenges that we have operating a network are also a tad different. You seem to be a little bit into monitoring things and checking that everything is fine, but real life, it's about configuration. It's about actually performing changes in your network. And that's a different world. Don't worry. I'm going to teach you everything that I know, and you're going to learn a lot about how you can actually do that tonight. Because tonight, we are going to spend maybe 3 or 4 hours, starting at 3 a.m., we'll meet at the NOC, at the Network Operations Center, and we will be changing SNMP community strings in the whole network, as per InfoSec's recommendations. There seemed to be some kind of breach. We don't know what happened. I was not involved for sure. But yeah, tonight, you and I are going to have a great time configuring these SNMP community strings, so you better have a siesta.
I don't do siestas. And I don't do working 3 a.m. in the morning. I prefer sleeping.
You don't do anything.
No, that's the point. That's the point. No, you know what? Let's refer to that comment you did about PyATS being able to learn of our devices, being able to take snapshots, okay, and automate the way that we test our devices. But we can actually use PyATS for configuring our network devices as well. And what we can do, instead of the 3-hour session, I don't know what, in the middle of the night, which I prefer not to, what we can do is that we can create a queue. We can have a worker that defines us a queue. And this queue is going to be constituted, is going to be compounded of many different jobs. Each job is a configuration change that we're going to push down. It contains information about which host we're going to configure, which device we're going to configure, and we're going to have a function that basically pushes down this configuration, has this logic about it. And what we're going to have is that we're going to have PyATS carrying out these jobs that are individual tasks for different devices. And when it has connected down to a switch, it has configured the switch or the router or whatever it might be, then this queuing system, this queuing logic automatically goes over to the next job, the next task. So let PyATS and this queuing system do the work for us.
This seems interesting but complex. So could you show me if it's real?
Yeah, sure, I can show you. So what we're going to do is that we're going to enable a worker. A worker will be listening for these jobs to be posted to the worker. It is our Python file that adds, we have created a Python file that adds this job to the queuing system. So we have our worker, we execute our job, and we have this worker that is listening for the different jobs that are going to be carried out. So you can see what the task is. In this case, we're going to apply the configuration. We have defined which configuration we want to have pushed down to a device, which device it is that we are going to push down the configuration to, and of course the testbed file, because we want to have PyATS carrying out this work for us. So it is the worker that is automatically going to kickstart these different jobs in the queuing system, and what is really powerful is that we can have several workers doing this in parallel.
Wow.
Yeah. What do you say about that?
Yeah, I'm just surprised, I'm amazed, because basically what you're describing is a tool that can do a very easy network inventory, that can do reactive troubleshooting, that can do proactive troubleshooting, and now you're demonstrating that it can also do configuration at scale in a consistent way. That's really, really cool. I'm starting to think, that one of the big challenges that I had was that very often I get a call from HR, just asking, when I perform any configuration changes in the network, if they have been tested, if I have tested them somewhere. And I've always thought of myself as a very brave person because I test my changes in the production network. That's who I am. Sometimes it has not worked very well for me, so I was just wondering, if HR calls, and we have this need to understand how we can implement those changes somewhere else before, can PyATS help with any of that?
Yes, of course. Of course it can do that. So it can actually test these changes before we do any change to them.
Okay, because what I've heard is that the applications people, the software developers, do not have this kind of problem, that they have some kind of automated way of testing everything and they just push the changes and suddenly automatically things go into production and there are no problems. While in my case with the network, it's a little bit so-so.
You lifted a really good point there. So in software development, what we have been doing for a very long time is that we actually test changes before pushing them to production. And that is usually, have you heard about DevOps? This is what DevOps is all about, basically. So it is continuously being able to push down changes to production in an automated way, where we're testing these changes before we break the production. So software today, they get changes pushed down to them every second, thanks to this. Would you be able to change your network every second?
I'm very fast.
Are you that fast, though?
No, not that fast.
No. How often do you break the network?
They allow me to touch it every month.
Okay. So, if we need to change the way that we push down changes to our production. Okay, so what we can do is that we can take the principles of DevOps and we can apply them to our network. And that is what we would call net DevOps, referred to as net DevOps. So we would test all of the changes that we do before pushing them to production. Do you want me to show you an example of that?
I love that.
Okay, so in our network, we have our source of truth. What is our source of truth? It is basically whatever is telling the true state of our network right now. What can that be? It can be a controller. It can be an IPAM server. Well, it can be an Excel file, for all I know, as long as it is updated. So whatever is telling you what is the true configuration, what is the true state of your network right now, that is your source of truth. So if you want to apply changes automatically, like what you would like to do is that these changes are going to be made to your source of truth. And then what you would have is configuration templates. So you would build new configuration based on these templates, configuration templates, and they are going to get all of the new variables from that change in your source of truth and automatically then push down the configuration change to deployment, okay? Now, after the configuration change has been pushed down to deployment, what you want to do is to test whether it worked or not. And this is where PyATS comes into the picture. So PyATS is an automated testing framework that you can do to test if your network still has a desired state or not. Listen carefully now. What you would like to do, though, is that you would first like to do this in a lab environment that represents your production environment. Okay? It looks
Blocker. No. Remember, I'm a cheap guy and I don't have OpEx, so I'm not going to get any lab. You know, I don't have a lab. I don't have any racks of. I'm not going to go into eBay trying to find, you know, any kind of devices. So no, this doesn't work for me.
Okay, Mr. Cheap Guy, you don't need to. Have you heard about CML, Cisco Modeling Labs?
No.
You can have a virtual instance on premise where you build your lab environment completely virtually, okay? No boxes. You're with me?
Okay.
And what you can do is that you can have your lab environment there, you can test all of the configuration there, and first push it down there and then test it in this lab environment that looks like your production environment, right? And then you can take it one step further, that you can automate, whenever you want to push a change, you can spin up this virtual environment and you can destroy it as you want. Like, this would basically be infrastructure as code, right?
Okay, that sounds very interesting.
Yeah. So, what we would like to do is that we first test this in a lab environment. When this test has passed and we see that, hey, our network device actually is in a state that is desired, we see that it doesn't break our network, so it will probably not break our production network either, we can then choose whether we want to push this configuration change to our production environment and deploy it. And best practice is to carry out the exact same test in the production environment to just make sure it didn't break anything and we still have a desired state. Now, during this process, you can choose, instead of hanging over your computer and following this process, like is it breaking anything, is it still working, is it still working? No, you can choose to just get notified about what the status is during this whole process. And if we take it even one step further, then we can actually use a chatbot to make these changes.
Wow. Okay, so what you're saying is that we can do exactly the same on the lab environment that is completely virtualized, that I can spin it up using infrastructure as code, spin it up, test my changes, destroy it, and then if the results are good, then I go into the production environment and do exactly the same, deploy and test, same battery of tests, hopefully the same result.
Correct.
Wow, this could really help me getting less calls from HR. Fantastic, this sounds very, very good. So basically PyATS, very easy network inventory, reactive troubleshooting, proactive troubleshooting. It helps me implement configuration changes. It helps me with CI/CD pipelines like this, like the ones that we use in DevOps. Looks like this is a very, very interesting tool that I might be interested on implementing in my network. And save us also some time.
Do you want to see an example of it?
I want to see an example, yeah, please.
Yeah? Cool. So this is CML. In CML, I have now my virtual instance. I have a virtual router, okay? It's the same router that we actually have in production. So what we want to do first is just to see what the current configuration of the interface Gigabit Ethernet 3 is. We see that it is down and it doesn't have a description. So my source of truth is Netbox. And it's what we're using, right, in production. Yep. So if we do a change in Netbox and we say that we want to enable the interface and then we want to change the description of it, okay? Now, what we do is that we can define a pipeline. A pipeline is basically a logical chain of events that we decide what do we want to happen after what, basically. So I have defined, there are many ways of defining your pipeline, and there are many tools that you can use. I am working with GitLab, but there are many different tools out there that you can use to define your pipeline. So as you can see here, Julio, follow carefully.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So what you can see here are the different stages of my pipeline. I carry out my change in my source of truth. So my configuration template that gets updated. I create now my configuration from the configuration template. The next stage in my pipeline is that it automatically goes over to pushing down this configuration change to my virtual instance in my lab environment. So all of this is being carried out in my lab environment. Now, after this configuration change has been pushed down, I have defined in PyTS a ping test. That's basically, okay, I'm making a change to an interface, then I want to make sure that this device still has network connectivity. So I'm just carrying out a ping test. So you can see here in my ping test that the ping test for a specific IP address has passed. So then I know that my device has connectivity and I can continue and push this through production. Mm-hmm. If I know that you don't believe me, so we're going to go back and make sure that there actually has been a configuration change here, so that you can see that I'm not making things up here. He never believes me. One important thing here you can see that the configuration has been pushed down. One important thing here, Julio, if you follow, is that it doesn't need to be, the push to production doesn't need to be automatic. You can choose to have that manual. So after your test in your lab environment has passed and all is good and you know that, okay, this is probably not going to break my network, you can actually choose whether you want to push down this change manually or automatically. Does that sound safe to you?
That sounds amazing, and the name of the tool that you're using, GitLab, seems to be very familiar, and it's the one that in my own company, other departments like the DevOps department is using for software development, so it would be easy for us to implement it because it's the same tool, same skill set, it looks like the pipelines are very similar as well, so that would be really, really cool.
Exactly, we build these type of pipelines when we do software development as well, but in this case, we do it for the network.
That's really cool, that's really cool. Basically what we are seeing here is something that would change the way that we operate our networks at scale and that would facilitate the merging of other companies that we acquire. This is really cool. So basically what initially seemed like a so-so idea when we hired Christina for the merge to help us, it looks like it's not that much of a versus story in between us, like the new generations replacing us with their new skills, but rather something that complements each other. You know, Christina brings the background on programmability, Python, automation, and I bring the knowledge and expertise about the classic stuff on routing protocols, managing the network, knowing the expertise about what it looks like today and what it has looked like in the past. So the certifications are exactly the same. You know, I got my CCIE, which is 90% managing infrastructure and 10% on APIs and automation, while she got the DevNet expert, which is exactly the opposite, 90% on Python automation and any kind of API-driven practices, and 10% on infrastructure. So very, very complementary profiles. So at the end of the day, it looks like we are not enemies. So this concludes the session, where we end up the role-playing here. You know, we are actually good friends, you know, because we have these different profiles, but very complementary. So yeah, thanks a lot, everyone.